The Miami Hurricanes are still playing football. We've hit the month of January, and the Hurricanes are coming off a 24-14 victory over the Ohio State Buckeyes in the Cotton Bowl. Now they get the Ole Miss Rebels in the Fiesta Bowl, 2 wins away from a sixth national championship. I'm Manny Navarro for The Athletic. He is Carlos Ledo of the MIA All-Day podcast. Carlos, the Hurricanes opened the new year with a bang. You were out in Orlando watching this with a bunch of other Canes fans at a sports bar. What was it like to experience that victory over the Buckeyes?
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the city of Columbus for making me their mayor now. As you could see in my little subtitle there, it's an honor. It's an honor to be the mayor of Columbus of Ohio. I'm going to have to decline it just because it's not for me, man. It's a shithole place where losers reside, and I really don't want to be part of that. But thank you for trying to elect me now that we are your daddy. Man, let me tell you something. I haven't experienced that sort of joy during a football game in quite some time. I think being through the last 20 some odd years and experiencing that and having that PTSD of just always expecting something to go wrong, seasons derailing midway, bowl losses after bowl losses, and just coming off that high of the win of Texas A&M, which was fun, which was great, and then coming into this game against an opponent that was defending national champion on a major stage, national television, where a lot of people thought the Hurricanes had no chance. The spread was 9.5 at one point, which was ridiculous. And going in there and basically dominating that game to start with, and then holding on it was exhilarating. I was watching it at the Gaylord Palms in Orlando. They've got this bar, a great sports bar there called Wreckers, and they've got like a floor to ceiling kind of almost television screen in the front, and then screens all over the place. And I would say there was, of the total amount of patrons there, about 70% of them were Hurricanes fans. Even the managers were stopping and watching the game and cheering for the Hurricanes. It felt like I was in a Hurricane sports bar. And thank God for that, because when Keontae Scott got the pick six, as soon as he intercepted it, I jumped up out of my chair and I was running down the bar yelling, "Go, go, go!" And I turned back and my wife was horrified. She thought we were going to get kicked out, but I was getting high-fived. So thankfully it was okay. So it was exhilarating is what I would say. It got to the point at the end we paid the bill, and I looked at my wife and I was like, we got to take shots now. She was like, yeah, we got to do this. She was more relieved than I was. One of our first dates was watching the 2003 Fiesta Bowl at a friend's house. So we've been together ever since. And to her, she kind of felt like, this black cloud was over the program since she entered my life. So she was super relieved and super happy.
Well, let me tell you, I watched the game here from home on New Year's Eve. My daughters, of course, are going crazy because they wanted to watch Stranger Things, the finale, and I just wasn't. My wife wasn't going to let them get away with that. They had to wait for Dad to watch it, so we didn't watch Stranger Things, the finale, until 1 a.m. But I watched the game here and in my kitchen. I obviously was helping out The Athletic cover the event. I was blogging, writing about stuff. Then I did my spot with Big O. And I got to tell you, Carlos, I got emotional watching again. It's for me. I'm supposed to be impartial. I'm supposed to be the journalist, right? I'm not supposed to feel things. But when I saw Jimmy Johnson and Mario in the post game have that sort of moment, it brought tears to my eyes, because it's like, dude, people do not understand the scars that Miami fans have. Like the Ohio State fans who are talking shit about Miami and talking about the program, and they don't understand like what the last 20 plus years are. Most of the country doesn't. They had pleasure shitting on the Canes for years. And to see these guys finally, I mean, as a journalist, as a guy who grew up in the city, going to the Orange Bowl when I was a kid, and seeing these guys suffer the way that they did, it sucked. It sucked having to be the reporter always writing about negative stuff.
Dude, there's to me the theme song for this team over the last 20-something years is kind of like Coldplay song "Viva La Vida." I used to rule the world. Now I sweep the streets I used to own. That's what it's felt like for 20 plus years.
And it's incredible, and I'm grateful now that they have advanced, and that I'm actually going to get a chance to go to Phoenix to go cover the Fiesta Bowl, the semifinal. I covered the Orange Bowl for us, so I was at the Orange Bowl last week, which is why I stayed home. It was always part of the plan from the get go. But now, my editor told me, she's like, "We want you to go be there for the semifinal," and it's a semifinal nobody expected because everybody kind of just penciled in Ohio State versus Georgia, and instead we got two upsets. I mean, Ole Miss, uh, such a tremendous story on their own, Carlos, right? Their coach, Lane Kiffin, ditches them. Pete Golding takes over. They get a D2 quarterback who was the backup at the start of the season, and Trinidad Chambliss, who's just, that guy is scary to watch, man.
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. And so now, you look at the updated brackets, Carlos. I mean, this is something nobody thought. I mean, Indiana, Oregon, a lot of people had that as a potential rematch, right? But this side of the bracket, Miami, Ole Miss, this is gonna be the first time they've played since 1951.
Look at that. I didn't even realize they had played before. That's how crazy that is. But to me, it's the most interesting thing to me about these semifinal matchups is you have basically two teams that play grind out physical football at the line of scrimmage, and that's how they decide to win games, as opposed to the other two teams that play with tempo and play spread and try to get you out of place with their, wide open offenses and hold on the defensive end. So it's sort of like the old school versus the new school, and this is essentially for both, not just Mario, but also Kurt Signetti. This is Does this validate now your style, your system? Which
Mm-hmm.
styles are validated now? Because for a long time, people felt like in college football it had to be wide open to be able to make advancements. But I think at the end of the day, if you don't play well at the line of scrimmage, if you can't, football's pretty simple at the end of the day. If you can't block, if you can't tackle, and you can't protect the football, you're not going to win. And that to me is, as long as you can block well, you can tackle well, and you protect the football, you're going to win football games the majority of the time. And now, if you do that at a high level, at an elite level, they're going to be very difficult to beat, as we've seen, as not just Indiana beating down Alabama, but Miami has advanced throughout the tournament so far.
Yeah, the other side of the bracket, tremendous story as well. I mean, Oregon has been knocking on the door for a long time. I got to watch them up close against Texas Tech. They had a tough time against that Texas Tech defense moving the football. Dante Moore didn't necessarily impress me. He missed some wide open guys. I think he's going to be an NFL quarterback. I wasn't blown away by him. And so looking ahead to a potential Miami Oregon matchup, I think there's ways the Hurricanes can beat them. But let me tell you, Indiana, who I thought was my pick to win to win the national championship once we saw the playoff field. I just thought Kurt Signetti, like what he did beating Ohio State and Mendoza, like it just seems like it's their season. They absolutely devoured Alabama in ways nobody could comprehend, Carlos, and it was amazing. I mean, I was watching that game as I was filing my story from the Orange Bowl with Ralph Russo, who came down from New York to cover the game with me, and we were just like, at one point it was funny because Alabama was in so much trouble that they were in the red zone, and it's like they were, I think we're down 24-0, and I'm like, they better kick the field goal because this might be the only chance to score. Kalen DeBoer doesn't want to go back to Tuscaloosa with a 0 on the scoreboard. That's how just how dominant Indiana really is. And you look at the lines here for the next matchups. I mean, Miami is going into the Fiesta Bowl as a 3.5 point favorite, but Indiana, brother, they look for real. And right now, I'd say they're the favorites to win this whole thing. Agree or
Well,
disagree?
Indiana and Miami are the two most physical teams that were in the playoff, and they've proven that throughout the playoff so far. Although Indiana's only played one, but still, it's, to me, I think like football is like we've talked about throughout the years. It's about styles and matchups and the teams that you draw, and what they do well. And I think that's why this matchup with Ole Miss is going to be difficult. It's going to be the biggest test thus far because of the style they play on offense.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of lends itself to some of the weaknesses that the Hurricanes have faced throughout the year in terms of how their defense operates, as great as they've been in the playoff. But I think if you were to, I would have preferred Georgia because I feel like Miami can outmatch anybody at this point. The way they're rolling, the way they feel. I think they play Indiana. I think it's the same thing. It's going to be just a bloodbath, both of them going at each other, being physical, try to out-muscle each other. And I think the Hurricanes can win that. But this matchup this week is going to be extremely interesting. I think on both sides, can both defenses handle tempo? Can they handle those wide open spread offenses? And which quarterbacks make enough plays for their team to advance? Obviously last game, Trinidad Chambliss was just freaking incredible. He was pulling rabbits out of his ass the entire game.
Amazing football game, and they were down, I think 21-12 in the third quarter. Came back, took a 34-24 lead, and then it just looked like the refs were going to help Georgia get away with that game, with that completely missing the face mask penalty. And in the end, Ole Miss was just too much offensively, but Miami can obviously score some points against them, and we're going to break down that matchup. We're going to take a closer look at some numbers. I got a ton of little graphics here for you. We'll get into the Final Four a little bit more, but let's start with some news, Carlos. And I'm gonna debut the ticker here, Carlos. The ticker below, as you
All
can
right.
see, Mario Cristobal today. I just got out of that press conference with him. Said Ahmad Moten, OJ Frederico were banged up in the win over Ohio State, are still progressing from injuries. No clarity yet on either one of them. I will say that Frederic, I think, was seen in a walking boot, which is never a good
Yeah.
sign. Um, and if you saw some of the post game video, um, Ahmad Moten, I mean, Mario was cussing at him, talking about, is that ankle hurt? Obviously it hurts, brother. I mean, you're going to lose some guys in these physical battles. If they can't go, how worried are you for Miami, especially knowing the type of tempo Ole Miss plays with?
Yeah, and I mean, we talked about it before the playoffs started. We saw the road to the championship for Miami and how physical it was going to have to be. And I mean, for everybody coming into these playoffs, health is one of the primary factors that help you advance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Ole Miss's case is good, they can have a coaching staff. But for me, I'm not only concerned about Frederic because he's played incredible out there at corner, did a great job on Ohio State's receivers. To me, Ahmad Moten is a big loss. He's been playing extremely well against the run. That defensive line has been physical. They've been active, and you need all those bodies up front, especially against a team that's going to play tempo. You need to be able to sub in and out. You need to keep guys fresh, and that's going to be one of the biggest things to watch with the coaching staff. How can they sub? How could they get guys in and out against tempo? Because the point of tempo is to try and keep you from subbing and get you tired on that side of the ball. But having two DBs hurt is concerning, especially against a team that likes to throw the ball like this.
Yeah, and we're going to show some numbers here in a bit on the experience numbers. I sent you a lot of these graphics that I created earlier in the day, Carlos. But in terms of experience, Ole Miss is one of the oldest, most veteran teams in these playoffs. In fact, frankly, all of these teams are extremely old in terms of just starts and snaps played. But Ole Miss is exceptional at the wide receiver position. They've got a bunch of guys that have
Yeah.
all started, double digit games, and so Miami is probably going to have to go with some younger guys in certain situations in terms of just snaps and I think this last game, one of their freshmen ended up getting into the game, who we hadn't really seen all season, Jabari Antoine, who was a blue chip recruit, but a guy who really has not played at all, and he got some valuable snaps late in that game. So we will see what Miami does if OJ Frederic doesn't go. If we see some of Fitzgerald playing, more corner, he can play safety, he can play corner. But it'll be an interesting thing. You mentioned another interesting story, which I actually ended up writing about because I was on the Ole Miss press conference. But this is a big deal to me. I don't know how other people feel about it, but Pete Golding does not know yet if he's going to have 6 offensive assistant coaches that Lane Kiffin is taking with him to LSU, and whether or not they'll be back for Thursday's semifinal. I think right now the feeling is offensive coordinator Charlie Weiss Jr. will be there, but the other assistant coaches, I mean, it's very, very questionable. And you want to talk about what matters. What are these position coaches, right? Because that's essentially who's with Lane right now. What they bring to the table. I asked Shannon Dawson today, whose call it was in the Ohio State game to go with Shamar Brown, right? Mark Fletcher in that fourth quarter had been running really, really well, and all of a sudden he comes out on that game clinching drive, and Shamar Brown, who didn't play against Texas A&M, gets inserted for Fletcher and makes a huge third down catch, has a couple big runs that lead to the game clinching touchdown. And I asked Shannon, I go, well, who makes that call? And he said Matt Merritt did. It was Matt Merritt's decision to go with him and not the freshman who Miami has relied upon quite a bit, Gerard Pringle. So you talk about what it means to have position coaches. They got a feel for their players. And although Pete Golding said, hey, we got a bunch of other guys that we hired, and these coaching staffs have expanded tremendously, right? Like they college coaches, these are like NFL staffs now. I still think there is value in position coaches having a feel for their guys.
Well, they're the ones that are working with them every day in practice, right? They're the ones running the meeting rooms. They're the ones that get to see these guys. They work those individual drills on a daily basis. They're the ones that go through the initial game plan and film breakdown with them and within their individual groups. So they understand their players better. Yeah, some guys might be assistants to the wide receiver coach or running back coach, analysts that know the team, but it's a different voice in there, and it's a little bit different when you switch that person out for somebody else that really hasn't been running the room that entire time and maybe doesn't have a feel for those guys. They've built
Right.
relationships over time also. Like you said, they know these guys. And in every team, those position coaches are the ones that handle the subs. They're the ones that determine, okay, look, this guy's getting gassed. We need to get him out of here. We're going to send this guy in instead. When the personnel groupings get called out, they're the ones that make the decisions as to, okay, who's going out there for this personnel group. They let the OC know, hey, listen, I'm taking out 4, I'm putting in 6. 4's gas. I'm going with 6. So then the OC knows, all right, now I know what play sets I got to have in my mind for the skill set of the person that's coming in. If I've got a different receiver coming in the slot, let's say, 10's out. I got to take Tony out. We're throwing somebody else in. We're putting in Upshaw. Now we understand, okay, we got to do different things with Upshaw than we would with Tony, right? So those are the position. That's their responsibility as a position coach to keep the OC aware of personnel groupings, who's coming in and out, and what the OC needs to think about in terms of play calls.
Yeah, and obviously that's a benefit Miami has. They haven't lost anybody off their staff who took a job in terms of the actual coaching staff who took a job elsewhere. Right now Lane Kiffin wants his assistant coaches in Baton Rouge because the transfer portal opened on Friday. We talked about this on the last show. The portal opens from
He's also doing
January.
it because he's being a bit of a dick.
Well, that too, but the real reason, or at least the reason he wants them there, is because it is an important time, and that's the crazy thing about the calendar right now, Carlos. I mean, the transfer portal opens from January 2nd to the 16th. Everybody's out doing their free agency meetings right now. Guys are taking physicals, talking to different schools to see how much money they can make from each of them, and so that's why. And look, Miami is in a very interesting situation in the sense that they're trying to win a playoff game and also worry about the 2026 roster. And Kane Sport on 3 today reported that defensive back Sheriff Denson from Florida, 11-game starter for them. South Carolina receiver Vendavius Jacobs and Boston College safety Omar Thornton would all be visiting Miami this weekend. There was a report earlier in the day that Rasheem Biles, the All-ACC linebacker from Pitt, was also considering Miami, but it looks like Ohio State is trying to put the clamps on that. And so I know a lot of you have transfer portal questions. What's going on with Sam Leavitt? There's reports that Leavitt, the Arizona State quarterback, is very close to signing with Kentucky. Will Stein, the former Oregon offensive coordinator, is over there now. So, look, all I can tell you is this: the portal open, but a lot of these guys are haggling over money right now and what they're going to get paid to go to a particular school. Then the coaches themselves want these guys to come in so they can do physicals. They got to make sure that physically,
Yeah,
they want to take these bodies, right? Because they don't really know until they get them on campus. Last year, Miami was in a situation with Carson Beck where he was going to the NFL, right? And sort of the same thing with Cam Ward, right? We're waiting on this guy who could potentially go to the NFL. There's some reports that Miami really wants Brendan Sorsby, the quarterback from Cincinnati. I tend to think he's headed to Texas Tech, where his girlfriend is going to school. LSU is going to make a hard run at him. Austin Simmons, the backup quarterback at Ole Miss, South Florida guy, entered the portal. He's the backup. He will be in this game against Miami, but that's somebody else that the Hurricanes could potentially look at here. So a lot going on in college football, Carlos, but I think for Miami's purposes right now, Mario Cristobal and the staff are pretty much zeroed in on winning the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah, and I think unlike years past, yes, you got to plug some holes in the portal, but I think because they've built up enough in terms of recruiting classes, they might feel good with a lot of the guys they have on the roster, and they're just looking to cherry pick a guy here or two. They're not going to overspend on somebody because they have a huge hole at a position where they feel, okay, we can't go forward with this guy. The only one being maybe quarterback, but from what I'm seeing now is that they're comfortable with Emory, Luke Nickel competing for the starting job if they can't get the guy they want.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Darion Coleman, obviously on campus as well, or coming soon to campus, and he's the guy that I've told you guys about that I feel best about, just because of the kind of skill and talent that he has. Kind of a Cam Ward-esque type talent, undersized, but special delivery, fast, quick delivery, and gutsy, and plays with some moxie. So there are 7 Hurricanes who have entered the portal. The most notable one is Donta Simpson, the freshman defensive lineman, who the coaching staff was really, really excited about. Donta had not started any games, but he had played 105 snaps this season. But as the playoffs and the more important games have sort of taken place here the last few weeks, he's played less and less. And I think, there's probably some representation and people that are trying to make sure that he gets paid. And the best way to do that is enter the portal. The other names of guys who have jumped in: tight end Brock Schott, the freshman who Miami was very happy to land. I think he played 9 snaps this season. Chance Robinson, the second-year receiver from St. Thomas Aquinas, just couldn't get on the field here. Dalen Russell, another defensive lineman. Markeith Williams did it early in the year, the safety, and then the 2 receivers, Nye Carr and Ray Joseph. Those are the guys that have entered so far. But Carlos, it really feels, and you touched on it a second ago, it really feels like Miami, while they're going to lose some talented guys to the NFL this year, they have some dudes waiting in the wings.
And that's the importance of landing top 10 classes year in and year out, because you just can't rely on the portal, right? Because not only do you want to go out there and add talent, you're going to have attrition yourself. And if you don't have enough of that talent depth to sort of replace guys moving forward, then you're going to find yourself in a position where you are lacking in an entire position group, or you have holes all over the roster. And, the portal is not going to be enough to supplement that. It might get you by for a year or two, but eventually you're going to need recruiting classes to build the foundation of this program and be who you want. Not only that, but I think it's important to have young guys learning from the older guys on the roster, and that culture filtering down and building forward. It's these guys have already been in the system for a year, 2, 3 years, and now they're getting their opportunity. That's why I think it was very interesting and important that they kept giving snaps to Okunlola at guard, which, again, this game, I saw the stats. His PFF numbers were the best at guard. I think it was the best rated offensive lineman of all the Hurricane offensive linemen during the this past game against Ohio State, and keeping him happy and letting him know that, listen, your turn is coming. We're getting you snaps now. We want you. You're a part of this plan. But ultimately, if you don't build those recruiting classes, you're going to find yourself empty in the cupboard and not being able to fill all the holes, and having to just get bodies in the transfer portal that may not be at the level or standard that you want to fill out your roster just to be able to get the team on the field.
Let's dive back into the Ohio State game quickly here, and just
with pleasure.
With some takeaways here from you, Carlos. These were some of the final offensive numbers, and I got to go back and grab some of the other bigger team numbers, but just what you saw from Miami offensively in this game that stuck out to you.
I mean, the physicality, being able to run the ball again. Mark Fletcher just being able to attack that Ohio State defensive line, make plays in the running game, drag dudes, be physical at the point of attack, knocking guys, bullying guys over. To me, was impressive. Again, Carson Beck not having a big game, but being efficient. And I think he had 13 completions in a row at one point, set the Cotton Bowl record for that. After starting a little cold, he missed a couple throws early on in the game that could have been had and kept that first drive alive. But ultimately being smart with the football, not forcing it, not trying to do too much, just doing what he had to, and really being just tough and physical and running the ball himself when he needed to. I think his scrambles were some of the biggest plays in the game, keeping drives alive and keeping themselves out of 3rd and longs to help this offense keep rolling. The other thing I think, this game especially, and I called for it after the Texas A&M game, they need to rotate more backs in. If you're going to get 35 to 40 run plays in, I think Fletcher has to be between 15 to 17 carries, and then you split those between Brown and Pringle, because you need to give him a breather. You need to be able to keep him fresh, especially in the fourth quarter. When you want to grind it out, you've got to keep him fresh. And credit to Marty Brown coming in there and making those plays in the fourth quarter on that last drive, especially. That last drive to me was reminiscent of, it felt like the Dorsey to Shockey moment to me, that last drive, because it basically put the stamp on, we're not going to give this game up. We are for real. We're done being bullied. We're done being the guys that let it slip away year after year. this is our time now, and we're reestablishing ourselves as an elite program, and we're going to do it with a dominant drive down the stretch.
CJ Daniels made a huge play,
Oh
obviously,
God,
to convert that 3rd and 5. And I thought the ball had first he kind of bobbled it, right? I think when he first got it in his hands, and but was able to turn right upfield and follow his blockers ahead to convert it. I thought, Carlos, this was Shannon Dawson's best game as a play caller. You probably disagree with me, and we'll talk about that. But I thought he didn't f around, and I think
yeah.
that was the most important thing that he did. Was there was no, I mean, there maybe were one or two where they kind of went sideways, right, and lost yardage, but there wasn't a whole lot of tomfoolery. It was, hey, we're going to hit the hole, we're going to try to convert, and use all three. It felt like a video game. It felt like the way I play college football 26, where when you play on Heisman mode and you're playing one of the best teams, like you can't really screw around. You just have to run the ball forward. You get 4 downs to convert, and you're trying to just possess the ball. That's the way Miami played.
I think he in terms of the way he called the game, he understood what they had to do to win. And I think he did that for the most part the entire game. He did a really good job of that. There were a couple calls to me that were head scratching. I talked about it last week when we previewed the game. Like you just can't go right into a jet sweep with Malachi Tony. They're going to overshift the defense and attack it immediately when they see him in motion. And they did that, and they shut that jet sweep down. Other than that, a couple of calls here and there. It was a really good game that he called. I think he stayed within himself. He didn't try and get crazy with the trick plays like he did against A&M. He really understood, listen, this is what we do best. We're going to lock into it, and we think we can outmuscle them, and our strength is better than whatever they've got on the other side. That screen call, I was messaging with Jerry Marks Peltz on Instagram, and he was like, dude, when he threw that screen, I was losing my mind. I was so pissed off. I thought they were going to nail it and stop us. But what a hell of a job by CJ Daniels, and what a great block by Malachi Tony, and a great job by those receivers sealing that off. And CJ keeping his feet because they also almost tripped him on it and getting that first down. I too was about to throw my hat and get pissed off because I was like, okay, great. Quick screen. Here we go. Predictable. But they got it done. So hats off to Dawson on this one. He called a good game. And just overall, the offense stayed within itself. I think, they had that lull to start the second half a little bit. Where Ohio State started getting momentum. It was also a situation where Matt Patricia adjusted early in the game. They were playing off coverage. Even the backers were playing a little bit further back, trying to read where the run was coming from, and then attacking downhill to try and fill those run gaps. And it worked in Miami's favor. And Patricia was like, "Oh shit, I guess I have to get out of this and start going more 4 down and running some more run blitzes to try and stuff this thing because they're more physical than we anticipated."
Yeah, this was by far his best game, and it mattered. It mattered how he called the game. I thought Beck was excellent, and I thought all the receivers played really, really well, even if they didn't put up huge numbers. And I think they're going to have a better day here against Ole Miss, who gives up quite a lot of points when we start to break them down defensively. Obviously, I mean, what else do you have to say about Keontae Scott? I mean, just the ability to read that play, to see the tight end go in motion, to jump that route, and then the difference between the receivers, right? Jeremiah Smith, I mean, I take him every day of the week and twice on Sundays to be on my team. But he completely whiffed on the block of Keontae Scott, and that's what led to the pick six.
Yep. And we talked about it last week. The receivers on our side weren't getting the ball. It wasn't a game that was conducive to throwing it for us. And they were doing all they could on their end to be impactful without the football in their hands. Blocking, running the routes, still selling it, doing what they needed to do to ensure that the play was executed the way it needed to be executed. So it wasn't stuffed because they were being lazy on a route or they weren't willing to block their man. This game again, the receivers early in the game and throughout the game, they were running a lot of insert, right? They were motioning receivers in, CJ Daniels, Malachi Tony, inserting and leading through and making blocks to spring Mark Fletcher on big runs. And that's physical. That's hard, man. When you're a little dude like Malachi Tony or even CJ Daniels, when we're trying to block a linebacker, that's not easy.
Right.
That's physical contact. And they're going in there and they're doing the job and doing it well, which is impressive. Defensively, we talked about it all year. From early in the season, we've been saying, Keontae Scott's the second best defensive player in this team, and maybe 1A and 1B with him and Bain. So he's just been a force. This team is different with him on the field. This defense has been totally different now that he's come back from injury, and it's shown in terms of how they play their defense. What they're able to do with him is he's a Swiss Army knife for the defense, essentially. Not only is he a nickel corner that can cover, but he's a guy that's great, like we talked about throughout the year, blitzing off the edge. They like to run him on blindside blitzes off the short side of the field, and he's great in run support. He's a physical dude that comes up and plays a run well, and he's a short tackler, which helps solidify that defense. He's essentially a hybrid nickel will linebacker for them. And another guy that I think the last two games has been impressive to me, who was sort of up and down throughout the regular season, was Mohamed Toure. He's turned it on the last two games.
28 pressures for Miami against Texas A&M a couple of weeks ago. How many do you think they had in this game?
25.
25 is right. 8 for Ruben Bain, 6 for Akeem Mesidor, 3 for Blunt, 3 for Lightfoot. 5 sacks as a team, 10 sacks in the 2 playoff games. I mean, they have taken it to an entirely different level. The challenge will be different this week with Trinidad Chambliss. But to this point, that pass rush. Now, there was some struggles in the second half in terms of containing Ohio State's running game. It took them a long time, obviously, to score Ohio State, but they were able to score on basically back-to-back possessions and move the football on Miami. What did you see happen to Miami in the second half? Ohio State did make some personnel changes on the offensive line.
Yeah, and they also went more tempo. And I think that's why they got some of those scores. They were going more tempo. They were trying to get quicker. They were trying to stop Miami from subbing. They felt like the defensive line had tired out a little bit, which they did. They did look a little gassed in that third quarter. So they were trying to take advantage of that and use their pace to beat Miami on that side of the ball. And they were getting creative also. I think one of the most impressive things that they pulled out, wasn't for a score, but Ryan Day brought 2 tight ends and lined them out at receivers. Twins together, and then ran a quick screen or tossed the ball to a back towards the sideline. And it was effectively as like a screen. It worked perfectly. I think it was a receiver they threw it to. It might have been Carnell Tate they threw it to get Tate the ball, get him active coming out of the backfield with 2 tight ends lead blocking for him essentially on the perimeter. They started to do different things and mix their personnel groupings and how they did things. But ultimately, I think Miami, that's a credit to Corey Helderman also. He saw what was going on. He adjusted quickly, after those 2 scores, and they locked them down. And we talked about it. Although Jeremiah Smith had a big game, the plan was, bend but don't break. Don't let them take the top off the defense and blow a coverage and get a big play in the passing game and have an explosive that leads to a touchdown. Make them earn it. And even though they started to score, they were 10, 12 play drives that they had to work down the field for that took some time off the clock. So essentially they were limiting their possessions later in the game that wouldn't allow them to maybe come back. And it gave Miami the final possession with 6 minutes left and just working that clock down and leaving Ohio State basically no time to come back with no timeouts was fun to see.
7 of 14 on third down was a huge key. You and I talked about it in the preview. We just talked about moving the chains and how important that was going to be for Miami running the football. You mentioned, I think, 150 yards being the benchmark, right?
Yep.
They hit 153, even though they only threw for 138, and were technically outgained and limiting Ohio State to 45 yards rushing. I mean, we knew that the Ohio State running game wasn't necessarily a strength. Bo Jackson, 1,000-yard rusher, sure. But this wasn't a team that was running over opponents. They were passing it with Julian Sand. And so everything that Miami sought out to do defensively, I thought they did, and they maintained it. I mean, when Miami punted up 17-14 there and they had to punt the ball back, what was going through your mind?
I was like, oh, shit, here we go. Like, why?
You and every other Miami fan.
Yeah, I was like, here we go. But thankfully, they held on. And again, that's what I'm talking about with, that final drive, putting the stamp on it and saying, we're not giving this up. We're not giving this football back to them without us coming away with a touchdown and not settling for the field goal, getting in the end zone to make it a 10-point game and basically taking the life out of Ohio State, giving them nothing to do with 59 seconds and no timeouts, being down 2 scores. You pretty much sealed the game on that one. So that was liberating, to be quite honest.
Miami wins 24-14. They advance, and now they get to play this team, Carlos. The Ole Miss Rebels. That is the newspaper, the Miami Herald, from October 26, 1951. You notice something about the players in that photo, Carlos?
Yeah, no face mask.
Yeah, that's the only thing you noticed, huh? Different era, obviously. 1951, Miami beat Ole Miss 20-7. I think in the Orange Bowl. I love the sub headline there. Helpless, pathetic Joe Louis loses TKO decision to Rocky Marciano in the 8th round. The same night. That's the last time Miami played.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
every time I hear Rocky Marciano, I think of Coming to America.
that's how
Joe Louis,
long
the
it's
greatest
been.
boxer ever lived. Joe Louis was 137 years old when he lost to Rocky Marciano.
Yeah, it's gonna be an interesting matchup. I want to dive into it here in a second, but I wanted the fans. I do all my research, right? I look at all the rosters, and I did it for the final 4 teams, Carlos. And I wanted to take a look at just the experience numbers here for the 4 semifinalists. Offensive starts, defensive starts. You can see it by position there. Obviously, the area where Miami has its most experience is the offensive and defensive line, secondary as well. But you want to compare it to these other teams. Anything stick out to you right now when you start looking at that chart? Can you even see that chart? Is probably should be my
Yeah,
better
yeah,
question.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Man, listen, it's the experience. You've got older dudes on these teams, guys that have played a lot of football, especially Miami and Indiana. Look at those quarterback snaps: 3,000 for Miami, 3,200 for Indiana. Veteran quarterbacks that have been there and played a lot of football, seen a lot of stuff. The defensive snaps for Miami also, it's helpful. All those things work to your favor when you've played a lot of football and you've experienced a lot of things. It's very hard to get caught off guard and have something foreign happen to you where you don't know what to do. And also, as veteran players get older, they understand the game more. You become a student of the game a little bit more. So when adjustments need to be made, you understand that a little bit quicker, and you're able to implement that faster than you would if it's a young guy and you're telling him to do something he's never done before.
One thing I did when I went 3-1 with my picks, I did not correctly forecast Ole Miss beating Georgia. I don't think anybody did. So I'm 7-1 with my picks in the playoffs, picking straight up winners. But one thing I did this week in my oddly specific predictions was I looked at how many top 40 offenses and defenses every single remaining playoff team faced heading into the quarterfinals. And so I've done that again here with Miami. And Ole Miss, just so you guys can look at. But I wanted to start off by looking just at the opponents in general before we start getting to offense and defense. And you can see here point margin, right? More margin of victory in terms of if that tells you anything in terms of like how good a team you're facing. Notre Dame, the toughest Miami has faced. Ohio State is second. And then Ole Miss is third. When you think about all of Miami's opponents to this point, Mario Cristobal said this is the toughest team Miami will have faced this year. Do you agree with Mario, or do you think this team isn't as tough as Notre Dame or Ohio State?
I think this team is going to be the toughest one because of the situation you're facing it, right? And in the Final Four, they've earned the right to be here. They played a tough schedule. I think they beat 4 ranked teams throughout the year as well. But because of the style of play, I think it's going to be the most difficult matchup. We talked about it early on in the season that this defense was playing very well, but if they would face an offense that can counterpunch them, and the offense would have to play well and catch up, it was going to be difficult for them. And they ran into that against Louisville when the offense couldn't get anything going. And even SMU kept them at bay a little bit. But what I do notice is how many of those teams has Miami already beat?
Yeah,
About
a
8
lot
of
of
them.
them. Miami 6-0 against ranked teams to this point for this season. So this would be number 7 if they're able to pull it off. Ole Miss, they've played. Well, they've had rematches, right? They had to play Georgia twice. They had to play Tulane twice. This is the teams that they face in terms of margin of victory. Georgia, of course, the toughest opponent for them, the one team to beat them. Oklahoma is next, and then Tulane. And then after that, Carlos, I think Miami's a little bit more battle tested. What do you think?
I think so too, and I think the one thing that makes me salivate going into this matchup is there's been 3 times during the season that Ole Miss has given up over 200 yards rushing, and then 2 other times where they gave up 150. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a situation where the strength of Miami's offense is running right into the weakness of Ole Miss's defense.
Right.
Georgia only ran for 124, but I think they got a little loose with it, and when they got behind, they had to throw it a little bit more. If they had stayed, I think a little bit more physical, they might have just put that game away. So they gave up 172 to Kentucky. They gave up 178 to Tulane the first time around, 221 to Arkansas, 221 to Georgia the first time, and 262 in the Egg Bowl on the ground. So
Hmm.
I think Miami's a better rushing team than all these teams. I think Miami could rush for 200 yards. If they do that, I think they win the game.
Well, let's take a look at the offenses that Ole Miss has faced to this point. 31 points a game for Georgia, Arkansas 31 points a game, Mississippi State 30. This is going to be the fourth time they have faced a team that averages 30 points per game.
Yeah, bring it. We right here, like DMX says. We ain't going anywhere. We right here.
Yeah. I wanted to take a look here also at the defenses that they have, or the offenses that they have faced. Let's see here. 1 second, Carlos. I apologize for the delay. Those were the offenses that they faced. These are the defenses that Ole Miss has faced, and you can see Miami is the nastiest that they will have faced to this point.
Yeah, and I again, this is the best defensive and offensive line combo they've faced all season. I think you're going to say that moving forward every time. Ohio State got to feel that this last game. They doubted it, and they got to experience that firsthand. And I think that makes a difference, not just because you're dominating the line of scrimmage and you are possessing the football on offense, reshaping the line of scrimmage on the defensive side of the ball, making teams one-dimensional, but you're also wearing teams down. So when you get into that fourth quarter, if you're not battle-tested, if you're not ready for that kind of physicality, it wears you down and you're out of gas.
Now, for Miami, where does Ole Miss's offense rank in terms of the toughest tests that they've had? Uh, According to this will be the third highest scoring offense that they faced this season. Notre Dame and USF finished with higher scoring averages. Obviously, we're going to get into the elusive quarterback situation. Miami did a good job against Byron Brown and Marcel Reed and even Jordan Travis. But where do you think Trinidad Chambliss is maybe different from those guys?
I think he's a better passer, clearly. I think he's also a gamer. He's the kind of guy that when the lights come on and the moments are big, he makes plays, and that's the difference between him. Marcel Reed was elusive. He can escape the pocket. He could kill you with his legs, but he wasn't a very accurate thrower. You talk about Julian Sain being a guy that moves in the pocket and is a great thrower, very accurate, but wasn't as elusive in terms of being able to get yards on the ground or looking to run like a Marcel Reed. I think Trinidad Chambliss is sort of a fusion of those two. He is
Mhm.
both a great and accurate passer, but he's a guy that could do a lot of damage with his legs. He's part of their run game. I think he's the second leading rusher on their team because they use him in the quarterback run game a lot. Their whole offense, and this is why it's challenging, is based on not just spreading you, but using RPOs in a way that puts the defense in constant conflict. And when you have a quarterback that can run and a guy that's aggressive in the run game and get you yards that way, now you have to defend a different level of offense because not only is he reading to give to the back or reading a secondary defender, but he's also looking to see if he could take it himself. They do what's called packaged plays in their RPO offense, whereas they'll have two plays basically going on simultaneously. Well, you'll have a zone read or a quarterback counter packaged with a bubble screen or some other RPO pass route where based on the alignment or based on the secondary read post snap, he can make a decision and make the defense wrong every time. That's why their offense is so good. Another thing that Ole Miss does very well is they use their formations to stress the offense. They use a lot of the principles that Lane got this from Art Briles, and he got it from Kendall Briles also, was they use their receiver splits to really stress the defense out because they get very wide towards the sideline. A lot of times they're almost on the sideline in terms of how they align their receivers, which does a
Mhm.
couple things. One, obviously it creates more running lanes because you're eliminating secondary help in the run game. And it also makes you declare your coverage a little bit more because you're so spread out in terms of what you have to align. Because if you don't do that, then it can beat you vertical or they can beat you inside on a slant or post route. So they do a lot of things formationally to go along with their RPO scheme and their package play schemes that put stress on the defense, and they're one of the best at using that and using the quarterback run as a threat.
You can see defensively where Ole Miss ranks among teams that Miami has faced. Third best scoring defense that Miami will have faced this season. Hurricanes obviously scored 24 against Ohio State and 27 against Notre Dame. I think if Miami gets to 30, whichever team gets to 30 first here, Carlos, wins this game.
I think and Miami would prefer not to have to score 30. In this game, Carson Beck is going to have to make plays because Ole Miss is going to score some points. I don't think it's
Mhm.
going to be a situation where they are able to lock them down like they did Texas A&M and Ohio State. I think they're going to score because of their tempo. I think they're going to score because their offense is really good and how they execute is very good, and they're good at what they do. They've got a really good back in K1 Lacey, so if you can make them a little bit one-dimensional, you slow that down. But I think ultimately, Carson Beck is averaging in the playoffs 5.2 yards per attempt. That's not going to cut it. He's got to be at 7 or 8 per attempt in this game. I don't need him to throw for 400 yards, but I needed to be at 7 or 8 yards per attempt by the end of the game. Maybe 1 touchdown, no interception again. 2 touchdowns would be great, but just be efficient with the football, but keep the ball moving, keep the chains moving, and basically throw almost for a first down every time he lets go of that ball to help complement that run game, which I think is going to be important. And to do that, I think they got to go more play action. I think it was 7 out of 8 this game, play action. And that play action, I think they were over 7 yards an attempt. So it was way higher than what he was throwing for the rest of the game. If they use a play action pass in this game, I think they can make some big plays in the passing game and help out Mark Fletcher without having to carry the load.
When you look at some of the head-to-head matchups here, Ole Miss's defense doesn't create a whole lot of interceptions. They're not very good in goal-to-go efficiency. So if you get in the red zone, you can score against them. They will give up points. That could be an advantage for Miami. And when you look at the other side of it, I'm going to put up the Miami defense versus the Ole Miss offense now here. Good on good, brother. Pretty much across the board.
It's going to be a battle on that side of the ball. And to me, if Miami can turn over Ole Miss, again, like we talked about, that not only does that eliminate possessions, but Ole Miss isn't great at creating turnovers, and they're a little sloppy with it. I think they're even for the season in terms of turnover margin. They're at 0. They're not a team that has won big in the turnover margin area. So that's something that Miami could probably take advantage of. And I think in this game, defensively, what you have to do if you're Miami is you've got to force the run in the RPO situations, right? You got to stay disciplined in your lanes, be aggressive up front, but stay disciplined and not get out of your rush lanes or your run responsibilities, and force the gives to make Ole Miss come down the field on you, not give up big plays in the passing game. Because that's what they do. They'll lull you to sleep with their RPO games, and then they'll hit you with a big play down the field. I think this game against Georgia, Trinidad Chambliss had 5 big-time throws, which is a statistic that is measured by PFF, which I think is only the second time in college football playoff history that somebody's had at least 5 big-time throws in one game, and he did it against Georgia in a huge situation. So they need to do what they've been doing. Make sure nothing gets behind them. Come up and secure tackles. Don't give up yards after the catch. Make them earn every yard and come down the field. Force the runs on the RPOs. And when he drops back to pass, make sure that you're aggressive, but stay smart in your rush lanes and don't let him get outside the pocket and make plays with his legs. And then when he runs it in the quarterback run game, make him pay for it.
Now, the one thing you will see in this game is that Miami and Mississippi, this is pressure rate allowed. So this is how good the offensive lines are in terms of buying time for their quarterback. Number 1, number 2. That's pretty freaking impressive. And then you look at the other side, Oregon's number 3. Is it any coincidence that protecting the quarterback is important?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the difference between Georgia and Miami is Georgia wasn't a very good pass rush team all year. They created most of their pressures off blitzes, and I think they blitzed Trinidad Chambliss over 50% this game, maybe close to 60%, trying to get pressure on him and get sacks. Whereas Miami can do that with a front 4 or bringing one extra guy like a Keontae Scott off the edge or a corner blitz. They don't need to go full send and man up on the back end to try and get pressure on Ole Miss, which I think plays into their hands.
Obviously, Miami elite at creating pressure. You look at the 4 semifinalists; they're second best behind Indiana in terms of pressures per drop back. Mississippi, the worst. So this is a game where Carson Beck should have time to throw the football, and he's just got to be patient.
He does, and I think opportunities are going to present themselves. Again, I think this is a game where Shannon Dawson really has to look at coming off more play action, and rather than having him go straight drop back or straight catch and read the field, use what you've been doing well. Ole Miss is going to come in here, and they're probably going to try and shut down the run. Their goal is to make Miami one-dimensional. I'm assuming they're going to mug a lot. They're going to run a lot of run blitzes. They're going to stunt. They're going to move their defensive line. They're going to try and create problems for Miami. They're going to shift their line to try and confuse gaps for the offensive line on their duo runs and those inside zone runs to force them to try and maybe bounce it outside and then spill to the linebackers so they can make the play and shut down the run game. So there has to be some different things that they utilize. I think late in the game, what you saw was they started going to more sort of outside zone runs, gap scheme runs where they're pinning and pulling and getting around the edge with Marty Brown, and they need to do a little bit more of that this game.
If you wanted to take a quick peek here at how efficient the quarterbacks are in this game, uh, this is straight up passing efficiency. You got Carson Beck, who's ninth, Trinidad Chambliss, who's 14th, and then the other game, Mendoza is one, and Dante Moore is number 7 there, Carlos. Do you think, I mean, Carson Beck is 36-5 as a starter. If you had to put $100 on one quarterback to play the best over the next 2 games, who would it be and why?
Fernando Mendoza. One, because I think he's done it all season. He's steady. He doesn't make mistakes very often. He knows how to operate his offense. He stays within the offense and doesn't take chances that he doesn't have to take. To me, it's difficult to say that, Carson Beck is going to go in there and make big plays. But Mendoza finds those spots to make the big plays and make the big throws on timely situations. I'm hoping that's what Beck does in this game. I think if they give him some opportunities, hopefully he makes those plays. The thing that concerns me here, if you look at those stats, the touchdown to interception rate, he's got the lowest one, which is not great.
Mm-hmm. This is how the Final Four quarterbacks have done the few times that they have faced man coverage. Carson Beck, the best efficiency of all those quarterbacks.
Yeah, and hopefully that's what he's going to face this game. I think Ole Miss is going to come after us. They're going to try and load the box and force Beck to beat you. And if they do that, facing man coverage, I don't think they have the DBs to match up with Malachi Toney. I think C.J. Daniels will probably have a big game. I think Marion could have some big plays in this game as well, facing man coverage.
Yeah. If they decide to play zone, Carlos, do you want to guess where our boy Carson Beck ranks among the 4
last.
DBs? Well, this is defense. I put up the wrong graphic. I'm sorry. This was the defenses. Let me put up the right one here. 1 second, as I find it. QBs versus zone. Here we go. Bing. Correct.
Yeah.
10 touchdowns, 8 interceptions versus zone coverage this season. Mendoza's the best at it. 15 touchdowns, 3 picks.
Look at those yards per attempt for Mendoza against zone.
Yeah.
Nasty.
He knows how to go downfield. I mean, that's, in the end, you were trying to tell us they got to go out and get Mendoza, right? And
nobody listened. Listen, man. Again, and I've also banged the gong for Aiden Childs. I'm not as high on him as I was for Mendoza coming out last year, but I think if somebody could really work with that guy, that dude has electric talent. He's raw, but he's got electric talent.
I wanted us to see how each of these teams have performed defensively in coverage. This is zone coverage, defensive numbers. Oregon plays the best zone defense. Miami ranks 23rd in zone. 3 touchdowns, 9 picks. So when the Canes are in it, they're pretty good at it.
Yeah, and they're going to need to use it a lot this game.
Yeah, and then let me put up the man coverage numbers here as I throw all of my graphics out at all of you here, Carlos. This is what happens.
You took the time to build them.
Yes, this is what happens when teams play man coverage. Is this ridiculous or what for Indiana? 8 of 33.
My God.
Yeah. That's based on passing efficiency. They don't do it a whole lot.
Right.
Only 33 dropbacks where they played man.
But they pick their spots and they do it well when they do it.
They do. All right. We have a mailbag that we got to get to, so I want us to do that. I'm checking to see if I have any other files that I wanted to show you guys here. This is Carson Beck versus pressure this season, just so you guys can take a look at some of those PFF numbers. Obviously, the 10 picks stand out, but he makes most of his big-time throws when he's not blitzed, Carlos.
Yeah. When he's not blitzed, he's facing man and he's got a clean pocket, he does well. That's his wheelhouse. I think where he runs into trouble is where but he's done a really good job over the last 2 games of having to come off the primary read and read across the field and make a decision. That's when he gets in trouble. He forced the ball a little bit early in the year. I think what he's done lately is, I'm just going to throw it away or tuck it and run, like he did against Ohio State, which was great decision making on his part. It takes a disciplined quarterback to know that you are, a guy that was a 5-star recruit, a guy that that's being counted on to lead your team to a national championship, and to decide to eat the ball because it's the
Hmm.
best play. Making the best play and making the right decision sometimes can be very difficult when you believe in yourself so much that you feel like you could fit it into a tight window, and it doesn't matter who's coming up against you. But it takes a strong will to say, you know what, I'm going to eat this ball, or I'm going to take off and run and do what I need to do to keep the chains moving. It's a 4 or 5 yard gain, and I'm giving up the opportunity of a 20 or 30 yard gain, but there's higher risk involved with that 20 or 30 yard attempt. And I know I can keep the ball moving doing the other thing.
Here's some numbers for Trinidad Chambliss, who obviously we told you he's one of the most well protected quarterbacks in college football. I mean, second fewest pressures faced Ole Miss quarterbacks this season. Um, but he's thrown more picks when he's been kept clean and not blitzed. So do you think Miami's going to pretty much stay in zone?
I think they will for a lot of the game, not just because it's more effective than blitzing him. As you can see, he eats the blitz up. 13 touchdowns, no picks, 8 yards an attempt against a blitz. 62% is really impressive. But it's also, how you limit that RPO a little bit, right? You force the give, and don't commit and attack the run immediately, to then have him pull and then have two other options to either run himself or throw it out to somebody else.
All right, let's get to the mailbag here, Carlos. And one of my longtime followers actually sent me a DM, and he wanted me to tackle this one. So I want to start there before I get into the.
Oh, now you're
To the
getting people sliding up in your DMs now. Now you're big time.
yeah, Nikhil Consul. He said, "Manny, I love the Cotton Bowl coverage. Carlos nailed the rushing yardage for the win." He said, "Quick question: Miami's recruiting under Mario is clearly elite, but QB seems like the one outlier. The top 6 to 8 high school QBs every year all end up at the same blue bloods, and Miami never really seems in the mix. With Ward's success and now Beck, plus an elite offensive line, why aren't we landing those top high school quarterbacks? Is this a perception issue with Dawson's quarterback development, or are we now viewed as a portal QB program? And if so, is that sustainable?" Carlos, I'm of the opinion here that it is sustainable in today's era. If you look at the 4 finalists, all 4 of them have portal quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And I think the problem here is you're either a portal program, or you're a program like Notre Dame who is willing to risk spending a lot of their money on a freshman and hoping that it pans out. And that's what they did with CJ Carr. And sometimes it works.
Or like
Sometimes it
Michigan
doesn't.
with Bryce Underwood, and he just had a shit year.
Right. Right. It's risky, and I think with how much movement there is in the portal now, I mean, all of the top guys, end up going somewhere to the same places and then jumping in the portal. You're gonna have a better chance to find somebody who specifically fits your offense and what your strengths are in the portal versus a high school guy who needs grooming.
Yeah, and the other thing is, you're finding a lot of these 5-star recruits, or the top 5-10 quarterbacks in the country, wanting to go to programs where they start immediately. They
Mm-hmm.
feel like they not only want the NIL money, but they want the opportunity to start right away, or compete for it right away, and not have to sit behind anybody and learn an offense. The other thing that ends up happening is those guys that do end up sitting often transfer after the first year and go find another program because they're not happy they didn't get on the field,
Right.
and they're not willing to wait their turn. So it's become a different era of college football. Here in Miami now, you've got 2 guys that have been waiting now. Luke Nickel obviously is a freshman, but Emery's been waiting for a few years. Now you've got Deron Coleman coming in. You've got 3 guys, and maybe if you feel comfortable with 2 of them, and you could develop the younger one down the road, you've got yourself now a stockpile of quarterbacks that you can go to if they're all willing to be patient. But if
Mm-hmm.
not, then you could always go in the portal and snag a guy. There's always going to be quarterbacks available. And I think um, Trinidad Chambliss, Fernando Mendoza, you don't have to go to Ohio State and pick up a guy, or a big time program. Even Cam Ward and Mateer, they came from Washington State, and Cam Ward turned into something he was even better than what he was at Washington State. So it doesn't have to be a guy or a major program. You can find a guy in D2 like Trinidad Chambliss. You can go to a G5 school and find some big time quarterback talent that ended up developing over time, and has now enough starts under his belt where you could say, okay, he could be a 1-year starter for us and get us further along in terms of our team development. There's opportunities there in the transfer portal year in and year out, but you still need to recruit quarterbacks because eventually you would like a guy that's been in your system for a while, that's a veteran, that's sat a year or two, that knows your system, knows your team, and can run that offense and operate it like the back of his hand. Because no matter who you throw in there, if it's a brand new guy and is only been 1 year a starter, it's going to take them time to adjust to your specific offense terminology, how it operates, your skill players. All that takes time to sort of gel.
It does, and but I just think they're not going to spend a lot of money on a high school quarterback. I
No,
just don't see that happening. And
I
if
don't
you're
think it's
not
worth it, to
spending,
be honest.
I don't think if you're like, it almost has to be the perfect situation. Like if Dia Bell wanted to stay home, right, and Miami's coaches really felt like he was worth that kind of money that he's getting at Texas to go be Arch Manning's backup and potentially his replacement, then they would have done it. But I just think because of the situation where the program is, they just haven't gotten to a point where they are going to heavily invest in a high school quarterback. It's just not going to happen. And right now, I think, unless that sort of situation plays out where for sure you're getting this guy and he's going to legit come in and be able to help you in a year or two, then they're just not going to spend that kind of money. I can go elsewhere. All right. This question's from Tommy Trouble 5. He wanted to know why Austin Simmons entered the portal for Ole Miss. He's not, and can play for his team. He wants to know how that works. First of all, if you enter the portal, right? I mentioned the 7 guys from Miami who entered the portal already or declared that they're entering the portal. A couple of them were on the trip to the Cotton Bowl. Unless the coaching staff approves it, you're not allowed to play. And in this situation, Pete Golding had a conversation with Austin Simmons. Austin Simmons is fine continuing to play in a backup role in case anything were to happen to Trinidad Chambliss. And so they agreed. But I think most other coaches, if you tell them you're leaving and you're not a contributor, deuces.
Hit the road, baby.
All right. This is from Armando Izagari. He said, I asked you a week before the SMU game why we should believe, and Ledo told me to enjoy the ride. Then we lost. Explain why Canes fans should no longer expect the worst and be hopeful this next game and in upcoming years. You can answer that one.
Sure. So how's the ride now? This is why I tell you, enjoy the ride. You never know how it's going to play out. Even we thought they were probably going to miss the playoff, but now you get the opportunity, you get new life, and look at us, like the Paul Rudd meme. Who would have thought? Look at us, right? It's that's why you don't give up on the season. You keep enjoying it game to game, because ultimately, and this is what I'm going to tie this into something I said on Twitter. Ultimately, the journey is the fascinating, the exciting part, right? Yeah, the ultimate goal is to win the national championship, but the trophy itself is not the joy, right? It's what you went through to get to the trophy that you're going to remember. When we look back at that 2001 season, we think about constantly the Boston College game, right? Where they almost lost and they escaped with that win, then smashing Nebraska, that game against Florida State with Ed Reed in the locker room at halftime. You think about all these moments that led up to that, and that's where the joy lives, right? And I think even that 2000 team where you lost to Washington early in the season, you're like, oh, okay, great. What are we going to do now? And then they just started reeling off wins. Finally beat FSU, beat the crap out of the Gators in the bowl game. And leading up to those moments, those exciting moments throughout the season is what makes it exciting. The journey ultimately is the prize, right? That gives you that satisfaction of winning. And that's why when I said yesterday, I don't want Ole Miss to be down any coaches. I don't want Ole Miss to be missing anybody. I want them at full strength because I want no excuses from the other side. And people were like, oh, I don't care. I want them to, if they forfeit, I'll take the win. I'm like, no, this is, in my mind, I want to be, like Ric Flair said, bro, if you want to, or was it Bret Hart? If you want to be the best, you got to beat the best. You want to feel like you earned it, right? If not, then what the hell are we doing? Just hand out participation trophies. Oh, you showed up to the semifinal. Here you go. Go on to the next round. No, you've got to earn that shit on the field. And as a competitor, you want to take everything they got at full strength and show the world who you are, just like they did against Ohio State.
I just love that we're quoting Ric Flair and Bret Hart right now at this point of the season, that we're still talking football on January 3rd, and you're getting a chance to dig it deep into the encyclopedia there, brother.
I just keep getting the references out, baby. Woo!
Rashawn RB242 says, even though it probably helps Miami, what are your thoughts on Lane pulling most of the Ole Miss offensive staff away before this game? I look, it's necessary in college football now. You need those position coaches to be around for these visits, and LSU is obviously trying to pull out of Ole Miss guys.
I think that's
Let's
horseshit.
you think it's horseshit?
Yeah, I think it's horseshit. I think he's hired enough analysts, like you just said a little while ago. The staffs are
Yeah,
so big. There's
right.
enough people to host these recruits. Lane Kiffin himself can explain to you what the offensive philosophy is going to be, right? And if he wasn't a dick, he would allow these guys to be with his former team, but he doesn't want them to win a national championship without him.
All right, Rashawn. So Carlos says Lane Kiffin's a dick. That's his response to your question.
Yes.
I'm saying that I think look, he took the coaches. Like, it's the unfortunate part of the calendar. I'm not defending Lane Kiffin here. I'm just saying, like, the employers are now LSU. They're the ones that are paying for this. I don't know.
Yeah, but Brian Hartline was still on the sideline for Ohio State. I bet if they would have advanced, he wouldn't have fucking hauled ass to USF and
Probably.
left them in the lurch, right? It's
Yeah,
not it's the dick move.
it is a dick move. All right. Chris Alessi here with the question. Miami has had its fair share of dual threat quarterbacks this season. Going into this game, would you compare our defensive strategy to how we played FSU or A&M more? Love the pod, guys. Keep up the great work and go Canes. Which game plan should they use? I think the Texas A&M game plan is what I would do.
I think it's a combo of A&M and South Florida.
Okay. I don't
I
want to
think I
see
think
the
I think they really
defense
did a great
giving
job
up.
containing Byron Brown in that game against South Florida.
Yeah.
And they run a lot of similar stuff because Alex Golish was a Tennessee offensive coordinator, and that Tennessee offense was very similar to the Baylor Art Briles, Kendall Briles era. That's the kind of style they run. So I think specifically that USF one might be the one to lean on.
Chad Harper, Groton694 on Twitter says, your Seminoles had a tough year, Manny. What do
They
you
did.
think they need to do to be a contender next year? Well, Chad, I don't think they will be contending next year. I think they've got too many holes throughout their entire roster. But landing a quarterback in the portal, a good one, is probably the biggest thing they have to do.
And showing their track record over the last 2 years, they sure have done that, haven't they?
Yeah, not. This is from K West 89. Is this
Kanye.
the best? Q West 89.
Okay, my bad.
Is this the best safety group UM has ever had? Could you compare them to previous safety groups in UM? I think it's being overlooked. Thanks.
Listen, my brother. Listen, my brother. Listen, let's pump the brakes here right now. There was a safety group where Ed Reed was back there with what was it? Is that
Mo
Marquise Fisher?
Sykes.
Mo
Mo
Sykes.
Sykes.
No,
Maurice
that was
Fisher.
with Sean Taylor the next year, but Mo Sykes was
Sean
on
Taylor,
the
yeah.
bench. Sean Taylor was on the bench. Brother.
You had Merriweather at one point.
Yeah, pump the brakes, my guy. Pump the
Yeah.
brakes, my guy.
Daniel Dianto3386 says, everything I've seen on social media seems to indicate Levitt and Sorsby are going elsewhere. If that's the case, what do you see being the plan at quarterback? Ride with Emory, or is there another portal name we haven't thought of? It's a good question. I don't know what they're going to do. The funny thing about the transfer portal, Carlos, is that it closes on January 16th. And there are guys playing in these playoffs right now who could potentially put their name in and leave after the playoffs are over. They don't have to do it right now because the teams that are involved in the playoffs are allowed to do it, I think, an extra 5 days after the real deadline. So Miami, the last two quarterbacks that they got were guys that we thought were going to the NFL. Maybe there's another guy we think is going to the NFL that's not ready yet.
Or a guy who maybe for some reason decides, you know what, I'm out. I just at the last minute,
right?
I don't think this is the right fit for me. Like for whatever reason, let's say Ty Simpson says, this isn't the place for me. They can't block for me. I'm not happy with the board system. This isn't for me. I want to get out.
Yeah, and so we'll see what happens. And I think a lot of what you're seeing right now in the first 24 hours, 48 hours of the portal being open is agents talking a lot of shit to try to get more money and more options available for their clients. So I would not rule out anybody at this point until it's publicly and thoroughly announced that this person has signed with a school.
And this, for the first time now moving forward for the Hurricanes, they're not in a desperate position. Now they're the attractive destination, right? They don't have to sell anybody on, sell Cam Moore on, look, we got a vision for this program. I think you could take us to the next step. Carson Beck, listen, I think, you could be the guy that leads us into the playoff and maybe we make a run. There's no more selling that anymore. People see now that, hey, if I go there, I could probably win and maybe turn myself into a first-round pick.
Yep. Columbus Kane, will we deploy a spy on Trinidad Chambliss, and do you see us expanding the defensive line rotation to deal with their hurry-up offense? I think there's no choice but to expand the rotation.
I think you got to give Bain and Mesidor more breathers in that first half. Rotate, keep one on the field, rotate the other one out. Marquise Lightfoot has been pretty impressive the last couple of games. He's made some plays for them as a young guy coming in and playing some spot duty. I think they need to do more of that. They have to be able to rotate the tackles, especially down a guy like Moten, because if not, they're going to get worn out up front. The problem is, how do you schedule that? How do you plan that? Because Ole Miss is going to try and go fast and not allow you to sub, which is what's going to be the difficult part.
That's going to be the biggest challenge of the night. And whether or not they're going to put a spy, I mean, I would think you have to, right? I mean,
I don't think every play. I think they're going to, on occasion, maybe passing situations, but what happens when you use a spy is, because of their style of offense, it's not like he's dropping back. He's not Michael Vick that he's dropping back and then all of a sudden taking off every play, right? He's running an RPO system. Yeah. So if you're eliminating a guy from your defensive scheme, then you're basically leaving a hole for that RPO to attack, right?
Right.
So you want to be judicious in how you use a spy. You want to be more structured in terms of your defensive setup and be disciplined in terms of your responsibilities, and then get secondary help in once you make the initial push to try and get a tackle on.
And I know we haven't mentioned him yet, but Kewan Lacey is an excellent running back who is dealing with a shoulder injury. One of his shoulders is pretty screwed up. He's got to wear a harness and the whole thing. But he ran like a madman against Georgia. So he will be a threat as well, obviously.
Yep.
This is from Timothy Johnson. Love to see that Miami's extensive rotation at running back in the regular season has paid off. We built up 3 different guys capable of being RB1. When Fletch rose up as the big game workhorse, we still had 2 guys ready if he needed a break. Elite. What do you think of the running backs this season?
I think it's been great. I think you saw Marty Brown getting a lot more work early in the year. Mark Fletcher, once he got healthier, became stronger. Especially now in the playoff, you could see how special he is and how he fits this offensive scheme in terms of the run game. He's the perfect back for that, and the other guys are sort of change of pace backs. Marty Brown is good inside the tackles, but he can also spring it outside and get around the edge a little bit better. He's a really good receiver out of the backfield, which I think is underrated about him. And you got Pringle, who's sort of the lightning in the bottle, which another thing that pissed me off. They ran Pringle in the A gap again, and it's like, bro, come on, just get this guy on the edge. Get him on the edge a little bit. Get him a screen. Can we throw a screen to a running back? Can we throw a screen to Pringle? Can we maybe fake a jet sweep and come the other way? Can we use Malachi as a decoy a little bit? Like, come on, defenses are keying in on 10, and that's been shutting down the passing in the last couple of weeks.
I will say Miami has to do a better job protecting the football. They've had the ball knocked out of their hands here the last couple of games, and Mario made that a huge point of emphasis today in the press conference. So did Shannon Dawson. They got to clean that up. All right, our buddy Asher Wildman says, Happy New Year to you both. Go Canes. How will the recruitment of quarterbacks in high school change? Seems like if you're a team that thinks you're a QB away, why would a high school player ever think they'd get a chance? Schools just buy one annually. At some point, Miami and others will be screwed. No, again, there will always be quarterbacks in the portal, Asher. I think while some kids are going to give it a chance, and certainly the freshmen on this team have, right? They've been waiting a while. Emory Williams has been waiting a while. They're also getting paid well as backups. So it's not like they're and the other thing is quarterback market is flooded. Like it's there's always somebody out there. So and if you have to replace your offensive coordinator, he's going to want to bring his quarterback in with him, guy he's been working with, right? And the coach is going to want that too. So I just think there's so many avenues. I think if there were fewer quarterbacks available, then you'd be making perfect sense. But I just think we have to reprogram our minds to think that high school quarterback recruiting just isn't as big a deal as it used to be.
Yeah, and let me say one more name there in the quarterback thing that is not going to come here, but I wish he would. Garrett Nussmeier. I think it would fit the system perfectly.
He's out of eligibility. He's out of eligibility. Yeah.
Oh, but the other guy, no, not Nussmeier, the guy from North Texas.
Oh, Mestemaker, Drew Mestemaker.
Yeah. They have a similar.
He's going to Oklahoma State. Yeah,
I know, with his head coach, but I mean, he would be perfect for the system because they run an air raid as well. But I think what you might see is in terms of high school quarterback recruiting, if I'm a quarterback that's not in the top 10, maybe I'm 15, 20, 30, I'm a 4-star guy. why not go to a G5 school, start right away, get some tape, and then try and make a payday later at a bigger Power 4 school, and get myself in a position where I can pick and choose. All right, this system fits me best. I got enough tape. These guys are going to come get me, and maybe get paid at a G5. Be one of the
Right.
few guys they pay well, and get more snaps under your belt early on rather than sitting behind somebody.
This is from Brent Peterson. He says, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much should I believe this team can win the national championship? Carlos, you go first.
Okay. Based on the matchups, I think, ultimately, I think they're going to end up, if they go to the championship game, which I think they will, they're going to end up playing Indiana. I think that game is going to be an absolute battle, but I think ultimately the style, both teams play the same style. I think Miami plays a little bit better. I think that's their wheelhouse, and there's no way in hell you're going to tell me that we're playing for a national championship at the crib and we're going to lose that one. Come on, bro. Come on, bro. How many times have we won it at the crib, right? We won, 3 national championships at home?
Yeah.
Including the first one? Bounce it
I
back.
think 4 out of the 5, actually.
4 out of the 5? There we go. So it's not happening, brother. We're going to win it. I'm going 9.5 out of 10 just because I don't want to be Kelvin and go say 10.
I am going to say 7.5. I think this is a very likely scenario that's going to happen. But I also think Miami is facing a quarterback who could beat them this week.
I think if they get past this week, they win it all.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I also think there's something Curt Cignetti has done. I don't know if he made a deal with the devil or what, but that team is just like, take the uniforms off, take the visors off, right, and the colors and the logos, and I give you all the analytics, and I tell you they've got the Heisman winning quarterback, and their defense is that ridiculous in pass coverage, and they create all these turnovers and shut everybody down, and you're like, Indiana's gonna win, right? Like, it's like, to me, there's no doubt. So we'll see what happens.
You know what that sounds like to me? 1986.
Yeah, could be.
Sounds like Penn State upsetting Miami. But this time, it's in our favor. Like, how about this? How about the narrative smashing now, right? Moving forward, Miami shouldn't be in the playoff. Beat Texas A&M on the road. Ohio State, they're the best team. They're the favorite to win the national championship. We're going to go back to back. Miami, the last time they played Ohio State in the playoffs, they lost to them in the Fiesta Bowl. Boom, knocked them out. Now we're back in the Fiesta Bowl, which has been, by the way, I don't want to mention it, it's a nightmare bowl for the Hurricanes. Okay.
Yes, I agree.
That's game I just mentioned.
That's an underrated, but maybe it's a different, it's a different time, Carlos.
And I believe Desert Swarm was also Fiesta Bowl, or was that a different bowl?
I can't.
29-0 to Arizona.
Yeah, I don't think it was that game, but maybe it was. I can't remember anymore.
Okay.
Jay Salter, does any of this happen if Kirk Herbstreit doesn't go on the air blast against the administration? I'm gonna say no. I think that was the wake-up call for all the people in the administration of the University of Miami to say, we have to do something. And the moment it became we have to do something, they reached out to the Moss brothers. They reached out to Joe Echeverria, and everybody involved did what they had to do to get this thing right.
And the Moss brothers said, you come to me today on the day of my daughter's quince, and you ask this of me, I will grant you this favor. And look at where we are. Which, by the way, I looked it up. It was the Fiesta Bowl, Desert Swarm, 29-0.
All right. I appreciate you looking it up because I could not remember for the life of me. All right. That's going to do it for our mailbag segment. We have gone almost an hour and 20 minutes here talking Canes.
But we do it for you, right? We do it for you. Enjoy.
We do it for you guys. Carlos, we got to end with a prediction. I still, what's your score? How does it happen? How does it go down?
I think Ole Miss will make some plays. I think early on they might move the ball and get up 7-0 on their first possession, maybe, because they're going to come out and they're going to strike quick. They're going to come out with some things that Miami's not used to seeing. I think they'll settle. I think ultimately the Canes will win this 27-24. They'll rush for 200 yards. They'll control the clock late in the game. Carson Beck will make a couple plays in the passing game. He's going to have to. And they came away victorious and head to the crib for the national championship, baby.
I am going to pick Miami to win 31-28. I think it's going to be a high-scoring affair for the most part. I think Ole Miss. I shouldn't even say 28. I should probably say something like 30. I'm going to say 31-30. A dramatic game. It comes down to Carson Beck throwing a touchdown pass to Keelan Marion on the last play of the game to lift Miami to a 31-31.
That sounds very exciting, but I don't think my heart or my noose could take that. You may have to find somebody else for next week's show.
I think it'll be and let me tell you, they have a kicker. So that's why I went with
Yeah.
31-30. He can kick 3 long field goals. But I think Miami will rally from 30-17 down to win this game. How's that for an oddly specific prediction?
Don't give me that, Manny. Don't put that curse on me. I mean, it's gonna be so stressful. Don't do that to me.
Well, I will be in Phoenix to watch it, Carlos. You will be here at home, and then I will be coming back to cover the national championship, whether or not the Hurricanes are with me. So we will see what happens. But for Wide Right, that is it for this week's show. We will be back one way or the other after my trip to Phoenix.
And I will have one more Dolphin hat for next week.
It's a promise.
Peace.